to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Ashley, can I have roll call, please?
Judy? Here. Fisher?
Here.
Briggs?
Here.
Cavalier?
Here.
Brecken?
Here.
Clot?
Here.
Menard? Hipma? Here.
Okay, it's time for the open forum. Anyone would like to address the council on any issue not already on tonight's agenda may come to the podium. Stage first, last name and address, please. Hearing nothing from the council chambers. Anybody on the phone bridge, please?
Nobody on the phone bridge, Your Honor.
Thank you. We have a proclamation tonight. I see Cindy is not here, so anyway, I'll go ahead with it. City of Crookston Mayoral Proclamation to declare May 2025 Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas mental health is essential to the overall health and well-being of every individual. And whereas millions of Americans live with mental health conditions, many face barriers to treatment, including stigma, lack of awareness, and limited access to care. Whereas Mental Health Awareness Month provides an opportunity to break the silence and raise awareness of the importance of mental health, while encouraging individuals to seek help when needed. And whereas the theme for Mental Health Awareness Month 2025, Strength and Connections, highlight the vital role that community support systems and meaningful relationships play in mental well-being. Whereas through education, advocacy, and the promotion of resources, we can foster an environment where everyone feels supported in their journey toward mental wellness. And whereas it's critical to recognize the diverse needs of all individuals, including adolescents, older adults, veterans, and historically underserved populations, by ensuring equitable access to mental health care and support. Whereas every person, organization, and the community has a role to play in ending the stigma, advancing mental health equity, and creating a culture where mental health is treated with the same priorities as physical health. Now therefore, I, Mayor Dale Steinberg, and the City Council do hereby proclaim May 2025 as Mental Health Awareness Month. I call upon all citizens, businesses, schools, and community organizations to join me in this effort to prioritize mental health, promote understanding, and extend compassion to those affected by mental health challenges. Together we can create a world where mental health is valued, understood, accessible to all. The testimony whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Crookston, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim May 2025 as Mental Health Awareness Month. You must be Cindy. Come up here, please.
Am I coming?
Right here
Right
works.
here? Okay. Thank
All
you.
right.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, this brings us to the agenda. Does anyone wish to add anything to tonight's agenda?
Your Honor, if we could add item 8.03, a resolution regarding approving the payment of property taxes and assessments to Polk County on city-owned properties.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Gary. Thank you.
Hibble. Aye.
Okay, motion carries. This brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from tonight's consent agenda? Can I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda? Thank you, Henry.
I'll second.
Thank you, Clayton. Roll call, please.
Jardy. Aye. Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Bracken.
Aye.
Claude.
Aye.
Hibble.
Okay, motion carries. No public hearings, regular agenda. Ashley, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Item 8.01 is a resolution regarding the approval of a non-commercial hangar lot lease template for the Crookston Municipal Airport.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Derek. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we were approached some time ago about the possibility of a land lease to construct a private hangar at the airport. It's been back and forth a few times with legal, and before us in the packet is the final draft of a template to use moving forward for any land leases for private hangar construction at the airport. We would ask the council to approve this template tonight. It would then move to for a signature, but fill out the details and then move to signature by the lessee. The airport commission would then vote and sign and approve, and then it would come back to the council for ratification as the completed lease, the first use of this template. We just wanted to make sure that the council saw the template prior to us utilizing it for an actual lease to clear up any communication or any errors that may be found.
What's the time period on the lease?
The land lease is set for 20 years. It also has clauses which allow for transference of the hangar once complete between buyers, and also clauses for either the lessee to demolish or transfer to the city for completion of the lease at the city's discretion. That way we don't get stuck with a building with no maintenance. After 20 years, we can require the lessee to demolish the building if it doesn't meet city standards at the end of the lease.
Have we ever done a non-commercial lease like this before?
No, ma'am.
Is there any concerns? Have we talked with other airports or cities who've utilized airports?
Yes, this was drafted in with legal and consultation with the engineers and other airports.
Pros and cons of having something like this?
Pardon?
What were the pros and cons of having something like this?
Well, the pros are we get a new building that somebody else builds that we get to collect taxes from.
Anything that people were dealing with as far as a con at other airports?
Nothing significant has been identified to us.
This gentleman that wants to put this hangar up, he was talking about it for quite a few years with previous administrators. Basically, if he doesn't do it here, he was gonna do it in another community. So I think it's a good deal. You know, we're gonna get a lease out of them. More money into the airport out there, like we're short of hangars out there as it is. So I think it's a good deal around all the way around. Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Jardy.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Bracken.
Aye.
Claude.
Aye.
Hibble. Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 8.02 is a resolution to declare a vacancy for the city council member Tim Menard at-large position.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this ordinance? Thank you. Delane, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, within the packet, then we have identified a recommended time frame, a 10-day application period to begin immediately and ending on the 15th of May at noon. This allows staff time to compile the applications, provide them to the council for review, so that interviews can occur at the next council meeting on the 19th. It is this belief of staff that the time that is already expended, it's become relatively public knowledge at this juncture that we will be announcing a vacancy, and additionally, the feeling is that those who may be interested would already be involved in government, already be aware, and 10 days is sufficient for someone to fill that out. So the recommendation, again, 10-day application period beginning immediately and ending on the 15th at noon, with council to review the applications and hold interviews on the 19th at the next scheduled council meeting.
Is this going to be the same application we've used in the past?
Yes.
We have a standardized form this time now,
Okay,
so
so you
so before it was a letter of interest.
Yes.
And now we're doing a standardized form requesting the documentation on that, so no, it is different from the last time.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Journey,
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Brecken.
Aye.
Clot.
Aye.
Hipma.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 8.03 is a resolution regarding approving the payment of property taxes and assessments to Polk County on the city-owned properties.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clayton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Henry. Thank you. Discussion?
Mayor, members of the council, as we discussed, as you are aware, last year's budget was rather rushed, and while diligence was taken to budget amounts for taxes and all previously budgeted line items, when we received the tax bills for this year, it was identified that there were some tax amounts that were not budgeted previously, and so therefore were not budgeted in this current year. While the budgeted amount is sufficient to cover the first half payment, we felt it was better, the staff felt it was better to get ahead of the matter so that we can have approval to pay the second half or second installment when it comes in. The dollar amounts are in the amended packet that was sent out this afternoon. The total property, the amount approved in the budget was $52,410,000 for payments regarding taxes. The first installment due May 15th is $49,571.29. And October 15th is $41,274.11. The balance that was not fully allocated was $38,435.40. The anticipation is that would come out of either reserves or any unspent utilized budgeted funds for the year.
So in the past, when it wasn't budgeted for, it was just taken out of reserves at the end, is that?
I believe so. Whenever we spend, anytime an account is overspent, it automatically falls to pulling from reserves is the natural fund transfer.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I roll call please?
Journey.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Briggs.
Aye.
Cavalier.
Aye.
Brecken.
Aye.
Clot.
Aye.
Hipma.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, this brings us to reports. Jeff, please.
Mayor, members of the council, I only have two updates. One is a request, just as a gentle reminder. Please, any member of council who wishes to have any interactions with staff, any directions, projects, or requests for action, please put them through the administrator's office. Second, I'd like to introduce Bryce. He is our new IT technician. He is joining us from Zach's former outfit. He has a very storied deployment where he has achieved and been rewarded with several military commendations that are normally reserved for significantly above his military pay grade, and that is very impressive, the work that he's done with the military, and I think it's going to be a great addition to our team.
What's his last name?
Spivey.
Spivey.
Yes.
Welcome. Anything else, Jeff?
No, sir, that is all, just my written report.
Okay, thank you. Delane, anything?
So couple questions. Are we on track for our June deadline for our audit?
We are not.
Okay.
We will be asking for an extension. The last report that we've had from CLA is they are still finishing January 2024's check reconciliation, and we'll be taking that over. Holly and I have discussed that and feel that we can handle that check reconciliations in-house more efficiently than CLA has been performing. And once they give us January complete, we'll be taking that in-house to get that completed for the auditors.
So we're behind 11 months at this point.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just having a really hard time with the fact that CLA gave us a deadline, told us when it was going to be done. We spent a significant amount of money, and we still are not where we need to be. And we've had 3 different people of leadership for CLA come through, and we've had to somehow catch them up each time. Like, what's going on here?
That conversation has been had with CLA, and that is part of the reason why we're bringing this check reconciliation in-house. The initial, Holly and I went through the billings, and from September 30th of last year until the end of last month, we had approximately $19,000 in billings for check reconciliations. We questioned CLA on that, particularly seeing as they have not even completed 1 month yet. They have given us some bill credits back towards that, and Holly and I have, again, that was a good chunk of the reason that Holly and I determined that we're going to be bringing that back in-house and having staff work on those reconciliations once January is clear. Once we have that January clearance, I feel that we can move rather quickly through. There were some miscommunications or misunderstandings on the part of CLA where I believe they were trying to make the reconciliations accurate to the line item and to the day, whereas for audit purposes that's not necessarily required, and they were moving multiple line items predominantly in payroll. We had 3 payroll cycles that were all put in journal to 1 month, and they were moving those line by line, and under our current software, those line items needed to be done employee by employee and check stub line by check stub line, and that created a tremendous amount of work, when in reality, for the purposes of the audit, lump sum transfers for accounts could have sufficed. They did not communicate how that transition was being made, and again, that's the reason we're looking to bring it in-house so that we can have a more realistic city-specific view on how to complete those reconciliations and get the reports to our auditors and move forward.
And we have the bandwidth for that.
We do.
Okay. So then, can I also ask? I know that with the start of the new budget, we already have the budget in the software, and we have everything is up to date for 25. Is that correct?
With the exception of some of the items that are contingent upon the end of the year.
Okay. So my question is, and it's something that Delane and I have both been asking for forever, is to get every other council meeting the year-to-date for what's been paid out. Can we get that now?
The intention is for Holly and I to begin that at the next meeting.
Okay.
So I want to say this. I will not accept at the end of the year because we haven't been able to get the financials to ever. I don't know if I've ever gotten it. Maybe I've gotten it and it was never ready. I will not accept going over budget on any item at all. because we don't know, I mean, we set the budget, we all agree to the budget during budget time, and then we come to the next year when we do our budget, and we threw that budget out of the water with nobody's really approval here to say yea or nay. So if that's the way we're gonna operate, the only thing I can say is we better not be going over budget in any single item that we approve the budget for.
With respect, sir, the pool's already over budget.
Well, then we need to bring that up as a discussion earlier than the end of the year, say, oh, we went over the budget by.
I think that's part of the thing is if we had the year to dates, we would know that. We don't know anything. And again, one of the biggest responsibilities of this council is a fiscal responsibility of overseeing that. And we have nothing, and I feel like we go into this blindly and then kind of find out, oh, by the way, that's not how we should be knowing these things. We should be seeing these on a regular basis. And my understanding is that the 25 budget's in there, that all the bills be paid up to that. That's all set. Understanding that 24 is not completed, but loosely should be okay. We should have a good understanding of where we're at.
We will have a financial report next week.
I totally appreciate the situation that you're in with the finance department, but the problem is we learned that our unrestricted reserves are at a dangerous level. Well, they got to a dangerous level because nobody here in the council really knew what the unrestricted reserves has been for the last several years. You know, well before you got here, you inherited this mess, but we were hoping that getting CLA in here, we could finally get so we could look at some numbers and say, hey, okay, we're under this, we're over this, why? So we can ask questions, but we just haven't been able to until we come to the end of the year and say, oh man, we're in tougher shape now than we were last year, and it's brand new information to us in November.
Again, we will have that report for council at the next meeting. It will, Councilmember Turvey, as you mentioned, it will be close. It will not be 100% simply because of some carryover journal entries that will be required once we finish our reconciliations, but we will have a very good idea of where we are, particularly expenditure.
Well, I think that's what we're looking for. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to have some reasonable understanding of where we're at with things. And if we're starting to see things that go over, then we need to have those conversations right then and there, and not oh, by the way, we're already over in the pool. That's not. We need to have that conversation.
I thought when CLA had a discussion the last time they report that we were on the right track.
Yeah, it was going to take 2 months.
That we're not. That was 2 primary contacts ago, sir.
I think it was Vance who told us that we were 2 months out, and that was supposed to be something we got in March or February, March, and
that
here
was,
we are, a year behind.
Yes, ma'am.
Is our fees with CLA decreasing if we're bringing stuff in house?
Our hourly billing will be going down.
And you also are negotiating credits?
Yes.
Then the other question is,
Just last month we had a $20,000 credit on the invoice with CLA.
I just want to make sure we have the staff. I mean, I don't want everybody doing 10 different jobs. I want to make sure we have the proper staff in the finance department to do the stuff that we're supposed to be doing.
That was part of the conversation I had with Holly.
And what was the answer?
The answer is between Holly, Miranda, and Kathy that we would be able to complete that. Kathy will be spearheading our check reconciliation, as she is the most well-versed in our funds and our budget line items. So we feel that she would be the best to move forward in the most rapid and efficient manner.
Is Kathy the consulting?
No, she's still on the payroll.
Okay.
Is that Carlson?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the other question is that we found a company to do our audit, right? And they can't complete our audit. They can't start until we have our year closed, correct?
That's correct.
Which means reconciliation of the checks.
Communication with them,
We have to.
and that's not going to put any undue pressure on them towards the end of the
it will not put any undue pressure on them. They feel confident that we will still be well within the September final deadlines. However, that does put, they're taking their time with their other clients at this
We
juncture.
won't make the June deadline, so tell me what is your goal or deadline for yourself?
Right now, the state has September 30th. My goal is to have I have not consulted directly with the auditors yet. I would like to see a draft audit by the end of August.
When do you think that the checks are going to be reconciled? Because I guess that's going to be the first question. You can't do that draft if you don't have the checks reconciled.
That I will have. Holly's been out for a few days, or Holly's been out today, and I was out Thursday and Friday. I can discuss that with her and bring that information back.
So then can I ask, is the only thing that's holding up the audit on our side just the check reconciliation, or is there anything else?
That is the primary item, because that's the check reconciliations are what drives the validity of the rest of the reporting.
That's the only thing.
So there's no other roadblocks outside of that then?
Not that I or Holly have been made aware of.
And so I just say now, September 30th is the drop dead last thing without getting penalized.
Alright.
Is the drop dead last, September 30th is the last day without us getting penalized. Technically, the due date is June.
So the other question is, to avoid what we went through last year, is waiting for everything to get done and then doing our budget in a stressful, short time. Is there anything we can do to start the budget process earlier, and when do you plan to start the budget process?
I started it last month, sir.
Okay, so when do you start bringing it to the council and going through that?
Right now, I'm doing the foundational underlaying for goals with department heads, inventory and capital inventories, capital requests, and prioritizing prior to bringing it to council.
So what do you plan on doing? How do you plan to present the budget to us different than what you did last year?
My intention is to begin with capital, have council identify the critical capital needs. We're going to identify annual set-asides that are required to fund our capital needs moving into the future. I'm taking major projects and large dollar items and setting those aside as bondable items. As an example, one of the projects we have slated, as we all know, is the industrial park, which is going to be about 3.3 million. We also have road and infrastructure work that we're anticipating to be roughly 2 million, and those will be bonded. So those will be a separate line item with the dollar amount set aside for the expenditures requested for normal capital. Once we've identified that, that will tell us how much we have left over for operating.
So in your presentation, I appreciate that, thank you. And in your presentation, the spreadsheets and what you were setting up last year was very cumbersome, very hard to go through. Is there a way to change that in any way so it's not alive? Because when you click on a field, I just couldn't follow it through very easily.
What I've done with the spreadsheet is it has a cover sheet, which is I've organized in a better format than was in the past. Then the total line item budget on the second sheet, and each department will have its own tab, which is tied so that if you wanted to look at any particular department, all you have to do is just click on the tab, and every department has.
It's not live. It's good.
It can be. I can either send a link to make it live, or I can send a copy to make it non-live.
I don't want it live,
so I can send copies.
Is what he's trying to say. Versions of it.
Right.
So, and I will be saving versions as I go along under A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3 versions, so that we can track any changes.
So I think putting the date for the version makes most sense. So then we know that you presented it to us on this date. that, I mean, ABC doesn't do anything for us, but if you put a date so we know this was what you presented on this date, then we know what we can look at and what we're the most accurate up to date is. But can I ask another question? Can you not budget within the current software you have and then do a printout? Because I'm pretty sure that's what Corky did, was they budgeted in the software, and then it was very easy for us with like the noted, like this budget is X, Y, and Z, so we have a really clear understanding of what that was.
It is possible. I'll work with Holly to do that if that's what the council desires.
I only asked because I felt that was probably the most understandable for us. And my other concern was with Excel things, it gets very confusing having to like scroll across. There's so much there. And then like sometimes if a formula is broken, then the numbers aren't accurate. Or I think that if you did it in the software, it just automatically automates those numbers accordingly. And so it just seems like it would be a more efficient way of doing that. I don't know if anybody has any other ideas on that, but it just seems like that was a lot easier to read when it was presented that way, with the notations of what each of those budgets actually were associated with.
I'll work with finance to set it up.
Thanks, Dwayne. Derek,
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
thank you. Don,
Nothing, Your Honor.
thanks. Clayton,
For cleanup week and then for street sweeping, I've seen that on the shit about that, keeping the drains open, stuff like that. Picking up the leaves, so if you want to let the crews know that, it's appreciated. That's all I have, Your Honor.
thank you. Henry,
Nothing for me.
thank you. Christie,
Some of us went to the Tri-Cities council meeting last week, and it was really interesting to just kind of hear what other cities locally, East Grand Forks and Thief were doing, and seeing like their pool situation, and just kind of hearing how they're mitigating trash and deer for that matter, which has been a really interesting thing. They've given out hunting licenses to people to actually hunt on the freeway in order to keep the population down. I know that Thief is really having an issue with that, so it's kind of interesting to hear about that. But just really nice to kind of meet with other officials who are sitting behind desks like this making these decisions. So that's all I have.
thank you. Morgan,
Yeah, so I also went to the Tri-City meeting. That was great to meet with others and see what they're doing and what issues they have and how they've overcome different things. I also went to the Early Childhood Summit, which was great. Carrie helped get a speaker there, which was really great. It was good to have different people from in our community that work with children there. Got to talk to some of them, so that was great. And actually, earlier that day, they had the Masonic Institute of the Developing Brain presented, and so that was great to interact with them and again interact with different people within our community. And then last week, we had the second meeting for Children's First Finance meeting, and also talking about daycare and different ways that we can overcome the daycare issues that we have. The daycare, I wouldn't say issues, not that there's issues with daycare, but the challenges of getting more spots for daycare.
thank you.
Also, just forgot to mention, I was attending the school board meeting at their last meeting, and I plan on attending those when I have a chance to. Yeah. Relationship with that school.
Great, thank you. I also attended the Tri-Cities meeting. It's always great to meet with fellow council members from other communities. Also, I wish Cindy was still here. I seen the loss we couldn't pull it up regarding Mental Health Awareness Month. I know on May 21st, they're encouraging to wear green to just be aware of the mental health issues out there. And last, I also attended UMC graduation last Saturday. It was a lot of students that walked through, and it's fun to hear kind of their fan base, the parents yelling and screaming and way to go and everything else. So always enjoy attending the graduation out there. Just a reminder, we will be having a Ways and Means Committee meeting tonight, so nothing else will come before council. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Means Committee meeting to order for Monday, May 5th, 2025. Just one item on the agenda. Planning session for our city administrator for upcoming year. As far as giving guidelines, what we'd like to see. Anybody want to start with this? Kind of a job, what we'd like to see him work on for the next
So I guess
6
Kind of
months.
talked about it last during the council meeting is the budget process and, you know, going through that in a little bit, a little bit better manner than what we did last year. It was kind of just to kind of hurry and it seemed like we were able to go through all of the items like we were used to in the years past.
Simplify it for us.
Yes.
And just with the descriptors, I think that was something that we were really missing this year, is not really understanding what each of the budget items actually associated with. So it was really hard to like.
Right.
Getting the package or getting the information prior to the council meeting is where we have a chance to look over and I think that's important also. Last minute things.
are you saying like the budget or the one that we get before each meeting currently?
I think that when we're reviewing the budget, to actually get it in like the agenda and not like at the meeting. Okay. It would just be nice to be able to like look through it to ask her or propose her questions prior to the meeting.
If it may help, one item that I am currently working on is an RFP for a contractor developer to take on a 47 unit housing project. I don't anticipate that would begin until at least 2026. However, we are in the beginning stages of getting that moving forward. That would be, the city would have very limited management responsibilities for the developer, would take it on, and it involves a TIF district that would reimburse the developer. So I can keep the council updated as that moves forward, and I anticipate in the next 60 days we'll have a request for an RFP before council.
Is that someone that was prior interest?
Pardon?
So that's the same person with prior interest or?
We have no specified person interest. That's what will call for an RFP. I've had 4 or 6 developers that I've been keeping in touch with that are very interested in seeing the specifics of the project. And I've been working with the city manager of Victoria, Minnesota. They have a couple of similar projects, similar sized and scoped projects as to what we're anticipating, so that we can follow their models as far as having a completed project.
In the city of Victoria?
Pardon?
The city of Victoria?
Victoria, Minnesota, yes ma'am, it's in the southern metro.
Yeah, it's verifying.
Then, on top of that too, I've talked to you a couple times about it. It seems like they're dragging their feet, but to move forward with any kind of development, we still gotta have that comp plan. And they seem to be dragging their feet on it. I'm not sure the reason why, but keep making us promises that 6 weeks, 8 weeks comes and passes and it still's not here. So I would continue to hound them that, this is kind of a priority for us.
I think to that point is that I think that was really the only other piece we were waiting for before we really dug into having a strategic plan.
Right.
And I think would be probably one of our top priorities is being able to utilize that information and actually create a 5-10 year plan as to like what our priorities as a city are. Because I think we keep saying this, I feel like we're just throwing something against the wall and hoping something stick, and it's not really thoughtful in what we're trying to do. I think we all agree that housing and childcare and workforce are like our biggest concerns, but we haven't really season of what we're doing. And I think that also is really going to direct the city administrator as well as to like what we do going forward based on that strategic piece.
Yeah, I know he's having kind of a working session on moving the city forward until we have the comp plan.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think Dale, you were probably on council when this happened, but the last comp plan was created and then sat on the shelf collecting dust, right? And that's, I think we have a better understanding of what it is now.
yeah,
And I think it actually provides us a lot of direction going forward. And so that I think will be very helpful in us deciding what we want to do.
and the housing plan also in the past sat on the shelf. We had our housing plan done, but it's probably pushing 2 years old now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We had contractors that were interested, a couple different contractors, and personally, I think that the ball was dropped on a couple of one things and wasn't checked into when we ended up losing the project. They had decided that they weren't going to do it, so something's got we got to stay on, keep them more informed, or keep us more informed on what their plans are, because as I said, it wasn't followed through. And that's the question. That was before your time, Jeff, but it's something that you got to keep in contact.
Can I go back for a second to this RFP for housing? I guess I'm really kind of confused as to why we're having people submit something for an RFP. Like if developers want to come and develop housing, why would they just come and develop housing? Like why do we need to have an RFP for it?
Because we want to identify the fiscal requirements and the fiscal realities of the developers coming in. We want to show the developers the parcels of land that we have available, what the vision is, and then they would present the city with proposals of how they envision that development to go, and then we would engage with one of those developers to pursue the project. Simply waiting for a developer to come and build things, it requires the coordination, particularly seeing as it's going to be TIF funded with a redevelopment TIF. It does require significant coordination, and this is going to be a multi-year partnership. It's not something you just want to sign on a developer and move forward with.
So we're doing an RFP for city land that we own.
No.
Is that why we're doing the RFP?
No, ma'am. We have. I've entered into an option agreement on a parcel of land, on a targeted parcel of land, so that we have a vested interest in moving forward and able to move forward. The city will never take possession of land as planned. The developer would then purchase at the pre-negotiated price and have infrastructure and acquisition costs reimbursed through the TIF.
So you purchased like a non-compete option on land?
It's a real estate option, yes, ma'am. A unilateral option to purchase with a possible 1 year extension.
Do we have enough land for any development to come in?
I've got a 20-acre parcel, sir.
This is something we need to look to for the future too.
well, true, but I don't think we can, read too much detail on this yet until, all the ducks are in a row. It's really not public knowledge yet until. So, I think it's a good plan if it happens. It's no investment out of the city. The developer takes care of construction costs, infrastructure, just turn over TIF dollars.
So the agreement that we're paying for, we're getting reimbursed for is only based on if we can get the developer to do the land.
It's an option. It's a normal process in residential development. It costs the city $9,900 for the 1 year option with an optional 1 year extension.
So if we don't get a developer in a year, then we're out the $9,900?
Yes, ma'am.
And you have developers that are interested?
I have between 4 and 6 developers that I'm in regular contact with that are waiting for the RFP.
And when is that gonna be out?
I anticipate to have that ready for council review in the next 60 days.
And how far are we into this agreement holding this land?
Right now, we are 5 months in. We have a 1-year extension available,
And how much is that gonna cost?
the same.
In the scope of things, I don't think that's really a lot of money. If the development goes through, then you're collecting on, growing your tax base. You know, it's,
If it gets funded, right?
well, I think it's going down the right direction. I mean, you know, you gotta reach out for developers and, I mean, we talked in the past where, you know, there's not developers in the city and, you know, and developers are out there that, people that wanna build, this is just me talking, but I think, you know, if they can make $1 million here, but if they can make 2 million across the river, where are they gonna go? So,
I also think we can't just keep doing what we've been doing and just hoping somebody shows up, so it's at least a move in the right direction of us trying something different to try to bring in new housing. So I don't think it's a bad thing, and $9,900 in the grand scheme of things is,
This is very similar to the project that we had in Madison Lake that brought 156 twin homes to Madison Lake. The difference is the twin homes in Madison Lake were income driven at 115%, whereas these are anticipated to be market rate.
You're saying 46 houses?
Between 45 and 47 houses.
anything else for Jeff?
I think for me, and it was kind of discussed earlier, and obviously we have, you brought it up, but I would like us to start having quarterly budget meetings, whether it's part of Ways and Means, its own meeting, or a standalone. But I would like to have quarterly budget meetings.
I agree.
I think too, being able to know when we're going over budget on something, we should know. Like, as soon as it happens.
And then I guess for me would also be a focus on childcare, just since we've had that report, and it's anywhere, depending on how you wanna look at the numbers, anywhere between 80 to 150 plus childcare spots that we are short here. For people that have,
So I mean, I don't know if this is the place to discuss, but I wanna know from a broader source of residents of how much taxpayer dollars they want us to continue to stick into the pool. I mean, I just don't have a good sense of it. I mean, I hear the folks that are strongly for it. And so I think there's a lot of people out there that I just like to, I don't know if there's a way to get something more scientific out there rather than, I don't know, I don't like town halls, nobody comes to them. I wanna get a questionnaire out there, and I wanna get a good feeling of, come the next budget, if we're gonna stick more money into it, I wanna have a consensus of the residents of Crookston to go down this road.
Delane, could I piggyback off of that?
Sure.
On that, is I've had a lot of residents say that they understand where the pool is at, and they would like to see us moving forward to at least know that we're looking at a plan for 5 to 10 years. And I realize we're looking at like housing and childcare and work, but I'm hearing from a lot of residents that is something that they are concerned about, is having it's not just a pool, but a place for their families to go, and more than that. And looking at, again, I don't know if it's a town hall, if it's a survey, how we go about it, but looking about, I mean, the lovely lady that was here the last meeting said that she'd be willing to help and that she could help with that, of what do our community members want and what is their priority? Like, are they willing to say like, we wanna continue to invest in the pool where we're at and have a sales tax to pay this? Or is it we wanna let
Yeah, I
the
mean-
pool go? And there, I would like to hear from the community and make that plan.
And I agree, that whole process of doing what we did last year, I did not like. I just wanted, I want a broad sense of where the majority of Crookston folks are at on this.
I do, have Jeannie McDermott was her name.
Okay.
And I do got her information.
I have an email from her as well, sir.
And I would like to, a small group, maybe bring in key indies into marketing, as how can we move forward with maybe not just a pool, but maybe a small play area for, 6 and under, or
It would be interesting to reach out to Ada, because they have kind of like a little community area where it has a pool, a play area, rooms where people can meet, and it would be interesting to reach out to them and see how they funded that.
Yeah, I just feel like we need to either move forward or not. And like I said, some of the folks I talk to just don't want to continue to fund it like we have doing. But of course, we have a very strong vocal group that wants us to continue to move forward with it. So I mean, and a lot of those residents were from outside of the city limits, which I don't represent. So I mean, we need to get a good understanding of what the city of Crookston, and I don't know what's best way to get that out there.
so. Yeah, I don't know, I'm gonna sit down and give this Jeannie a call, and it sounds like she's got a heck of a background in marketing and fundraising, and just try not to reinvent the wheel, but try to get a committee, and let's see if we can kind of put something together like we did with the CSC.
Right, but first of all, we need to figure out what the appetite is for the majority of the residents.
And that would be part of the discussion.
Right, okay.
I think like having a survey of, how many people are interested in the pool in its current state, how many people are interested in possibly doing some type of, sales tax or something to build something out, 2 to 4 years, whatever. I think it's probably gonna take like 4 years, let's be honest. I think that's what they normally say. And then like, what does that look like? Is that a year-round indoor pool? Is that something like East Grand? We just were at the Tri-City meetings last week, and, East Grand was telling us about their outdoor pool is open 71 days. It makes $100,000. It's probably had the highest attendance this last summer. It's highly utilized. It cost $165,000 to run. But, if you're having that many people utilizing a space, I think that, not everything is something that's gonna be a moneymaker, but it needs to be clearly something that is bringing a lot of use for the community, right? And so I think also if we're gonna ask these questions, we should be asking the questions of, if we do get a new pool, what does that look like, right?
For sure, and I'm happy to hear that we have the usage of it has been a lot higher, and I think that's because of the pressure that we've all been, dealing with, so there's a lot more, vision on that part of it. So I'd like to, like I said, I'm not an anti-pool guy. If we're gonna do this, we can't do what we've been doing. So we can't continue to break our budget trying to keep this thing open on because the building is just in a rough shape, and every couple of months we have another high budget item that we didn't budget for,
Yeah, I think the other part of that though too is I think that, we have a lot of community members who really do love the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should also give them the opportunity to, try to save the pool in their own way. So let's give them like whatever it would be to do the initial like fixing, right? And I mean, I think that also gives them the opportunity to try to fundraise, but I think that a lot of times we've just given them these like one-off, like, well, this is gonna cost this, or this is gonna cost this. If we can actually come up with like the dollar value, like a legitimate assessment of this is all the things that need to be cost, I think it's a lot easier for them to go out and ask for funds based on actually knowing what legitimately it's gonna cost them to fix it, right? And I know that some of the things that were in the assessment were a little like be nice to fix, but aren't necessarily like a need, right? And so like, I think that if we're able to give that, you know, community group the opportunity, if this is something that they're really committed to, then maybe it's not out of taxpayer money per se, but it's something that they would have the opportunity, and that we're giving them the opportunity to try to raise the funds that it would take to order to make it happen, right? I think that's only fair if we're gonna consider that, right, is to give them also the opportunity. And I know that a lot of things in our town have actually been community funded things. I think of Castle Park, I think of the splash pad, I think of some of those things at the CSC. So I think that if we're able to actually give like clearly definitive lines, you know, and maybe it are those people who don't live in town but really utilize the pool, maybe they're willing to step up and put funds into it as well. So I think that we should also provide that opportunity for them to try to do that if that's something that they're really interested in.
Okay, anything else for Jeff?
I would like to add something, Mr. Mayor, a question for the council. As was disclosed at the last budget, our last budget was 100% operating. Every bit of our tax levy and every bit of our LGA went towards operating. There was not a dime in that budget that went to reserves. Our 2023 audit identified that we were only at 1/3 the level that our cash policy reserve should be at. Since that point in time, it was identified that out of that $1.1 million, over 300,000 of it was restricted for public safety purchases. That was the radios for police and fire, which takes that $1.1 million down to about 780,000 that we actually had in cash reserves. I would ask this council, what is the priority for the next budget moving forward as far as rebuilding our capital reserves? Because what I'm hearing, I have not yet heard anything in limiting our expenditures so that we can begin the process of rebuilding our reserves to an appropriate level.
I think there's a couple things we need to look at this. I think you need to look at what departments and all the departments on where you can cut heavily in all these departments is my thoughts. That's the first step. And the second step is you need to come to us with a percent of the levy that we have to put out there to start rebuilding, because we're gonna have to rebuild it through our levies. That's gonna have to be an automatic line items. Okay, whatever the percent is that we come up with, 10% of the levy is gonna go to, or whatever it is, goes to rebuilding and that money goes directly into our unrestricted, and it continues to do that year after year. I mean, that's one option.
Well, I think the other part, Delaney, too, in that we kind of had our hands tied on is that we couldn't deeply dig into the different budgets. And, you know, I think, you know, looking at Park and Rec is such a significant amount of our budget. And again, it was so broad that it's hard to like really make those decisions that we really needed to be making, that we're digging down and actually what are we giving up by cutting this percent? And I think that's going to be really critical in this next budget cycle, and being able to like clearly understand what we're cutting, right?
I mean, it has to be a discussion amongst all of us, I would think.
Right.
I mean, we just can't. I mean, I would like to have a presentation of things that are there, and maybe we agree and maybe we don't agree, and it's gonna be tough. But I think we're in a situation where we have to start rebuilding our unrestricted. So I mean, Jeff, what do you think? Is that a, give me your idea of how we do that.
My professional opinion is that we cannot continue supplying. We have a declining population. Our tax base is stagnant or declining. This year, the anticipated increase for our tax capacity is an increase of 200,000, which is less than what it decreased last year. So we're not going to make that up in one year.
I know, but how do we start rebuilding
From a long-term standpoint, our budget, it was just mentioned, drastic cuts. Our departments cannot absorb drastic cuts without significantly interfering with their operations. The city is going to have to make some very difficult decisions as to which amenities are taking priorities, which services are taking priority, in order for us to meet our reserve requirements. Currently, as I mentioned, coming out of 2023, it's been identified that we had roughly 780,000 after we identified the 300,000 that was misallocated to reserves for those radios. That means that we need to make up between 2.9 and $3 million in reserves, and at $400,000 a year, that's going to take us about 8 years. And that with an uncertain tax base, uncertain inflation rates, and uncertain expenses, I think that is too risky for the city to take on. I think we have some very difficult decisions that we need to make, and I think some of those are going to be some amenities at some level are going to have to be cut back in order for us to meet our budget and meet the requirements that we have coming forward. Chuck and I have been working with AE2S, and we've identified between 10 and $12 million in work that needs to be done in infrastructure and roads over the next 5 years. The bond payments alone on the infrastructure and critical needs, the bond payments are going starting in 27 are going to be very minimal at about 22,000 a year, but they rapidly increase after that based on the infrastructure bonding that we're going to have to be doing. That's going to put further stress on our tax levy, and as of last year, we were already at 93% of our tax capacity. The math doesn't add up if we keep every amenity that we currently have, and the departments, based on the last 30 years of 2%, 3% increases in the levy, they've already cut themselves to the bone. They've already slashed those tax or those costs, those expenses. The departments can't absorb significant cuts to make that difference. So from a financial standpoint, everything that we've been discussing, these are all worthy things. But as a council, we need to look at, I believe that the council needs to look at prioritizing some of these items in order to keep the fiscal stability of the city in place and improving as it needs to.
And I think it would be very helpful to know what those actual line items are this year to make those decisions.
I mean, other than amenities, I mean, what other types of cuts are there possibilities?
To put things into perspective, sir, the fire department alone, in order to fund vehicles and equipment for the fire department, this is not counting a new building, which will eventually need to be done. That would anticipate it to be a bond. Just for equipment and vehicles, we need to set aside $211,000 a year just to keep the fire department on pace. For Parks and Rec, we're looking between $700,000 and $900,000 a year to replace our park equipment, to replace their vehicles, to replace their sweepers, their mowers, to replace their tractors, and all. We're looking. I have a draft budget that still has 5 departments that I have to meet with, and I'm already at $980,000 a year that we need to set aside just to keep up with future capital needs, not counting major projects that would be bonded, such as large buildings or large facilities. That's going to come straight. That comes off the top. we're already at a budget that does not contribute a dime towards any of those expenses. We have some very difficult decisions coming up.
As part of the Park and Rec, I'd really like us to reevaluate the amount of parks we have right now and the amount of mowing we have. Because we have what, is it 20 parks?
22, ma'am.
We have 22 parks for 7,500 people. I really do wonder if that in itself needs to be really reevaluated between the mowing and the amount of equipment and stuff that's going into those spaces. That in itself, those are the types of things when I'm talking about line items, I think that we need to look into deeply, because I think that is time suck. And I love parks and I have kids and we utilize a lot of the parks in our town, but 22 for 7,500 people seems a bit excessive. So I think that there are things that we can look at and really reevaluate what that looks like going forward, that we just, yeah, that's always been that way, but maybe those are also the things that we need to look at. I'm not saying that we don't need to look at the pool. I'm not saying that we don't need to look at other things, but I do wonder about those types of things as far as like the amount of time and labor and mowing and the upkeep on those that we currently have.
If I can piggyback off of that, ma'am, I met with Scott and Jake earlier today. Just as an example, behind Dairy Queen, we have a park. Less than 300 feet away, we have another park.
So just a question, you know, say we cut down the number of parks, what happens? I mean, we just can't we're gonna end up, we can't let the grass run wild and stuff, so we take the equipment out and sell it and then you gotta
Wildflower gardens.
Well, we discussed at the Tri-Cities meeting, we talked about the Castle Park in East Grand Forks, and I think you can do more with less. You can have less parks, but have them maybe a little more elaborate, a little larger, less square footage for mowing and.
But
But to your point, what do we do with the lots then?
Well, I think that, so Rochester was down there for a meeting a couple of years ago, and they did a lot of wild grasses or indigenous grasses and things like that in a lot of their spaces. And it worked well. It was landscaped in its own, but it was, you know, not a lot of work on behalf of the Park and Rec Department. So I think that those are types of things that we can do. I know that some of the lots, you know, is it something that the city considers for selling for housing? I mean, I think that's another opportunity to provide space for housing. I mean, I think there's a lot of different things we can do with those.
So Jeff, on that note, is it possible for you, Jake, and Scott maybe to come up with a list of how many parks you think would be appropriate, and then which parks would be on the chopping block per se, and then what do we do with the equipment that's in there, and then how do we maintain it without costing us a bunch of money after the fact, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to get rid of them and it's still gonna cost us the same amount to maintain them. So that makes zero sense to me, but I like what Derek just said. I mean, maybe we take we develop a park that is, you know, has more stuff in it, it's just bigger and more maybe centrally located and.
I think to that though, I think that there should be evaluations on what parks are being used or not used, because for some children and families in our community, they don't have transportation, so we might say one or two, but then we are removing parks that have easy access for those children and easy access for parents to take their children somewhere. I have heard from many that a big draw here for families is because of our amount of parks and how easy it is to access them and how it is free and it is public for people to take their children there, that they would not have access or they don't have access to go to other places.
Right, and I hope that would be part of the process of which parks seem to be utilized and, you know, but
not all parks have equipment in them.
I mean, again, we need to be getting our mind right and thinking about we're in a dire situation to try to save a bunch of money and this is just one.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna, by doing these cuts that we're talking about, we're not gonna make everybody happy, so we just gotta do the best we can to figure out what do you think a good number is, and then looking at the least utilized parks and then maybe bring it here and let's discuss it.
Well, I think the other thing, Delane, is that there are a lot of parks that are literally like a block apart. And I think that doesn't limit access, but maybe it's a block more versus, right across the street. But not all the parks have like playground equipment, I think of like Landslide Park doesn't have equipment. There's a lot of parks that don't necessarily have equipment. They're just mode spaces. But I think that if we're, maybe utilize proximity being one of the considerations, if you have 3 parks within, 4 blocks from each other, that maybe then you consider, considering eliminating 1 or 2, but I think that just for so many reasons, it's not just this, but it really is the amount of time and effort that Park and Rec spends on mowing and maintaining these spaces. It's just one more of those things that this is an amenity, but is it like over excessive amenity, or is it something that legitimately is utilized? So
You're gonna have, regarding our parks, Jeff, Scott, and Jake are gonna have to dig back on some of the history of these parks because they were gifted to the city to be a park.
Yeah.
So you just can't go and eliminate a park without knowing past history if it was donated to the city to be a park.
Well, that's why we're asking them to do the research. We're not randomly picking parks at this point.
No, research wasn't brought in, it was see which ones were most utilized, but I don't.
Well, yeah, everything, I guess. You gotta look at everything. And
well, I guess the other question is if we don't use it as a park, then what's the agreement on the land use? Does it go back to the family? What happens there? I mean, if the city's not willing to maintain it, I mean, what's the next step? Is it just because we've accepted it as a park that we now are like tied to having to do this the whole time? I mean, that doesn't make sense either.
Under normal circumstances, the restrictions is a donation for parks is that if it's not used as a park, it normally does go back to the previous landowner or their heirs.
So
Yeah,
something
that's
to consider
fine.
as well.
If they're still around or living or
Their estate, yeah.
what's the question?
Yeah,
Uh,
that can be looked into.
What about what was the number we had of how much the city mows? I mean, is there anything that we're mowing that's not a park that we can probably look at?
Scott has that answer.
When I started 14 years ago, we mowed 300 acres a week. Over the last 14 years, we have gotten to over 400 acres.
So what's the reason for the increase?
Well, let's see, we've had things that have been handed to us that where, over years where there were handshakes done. Yeah, we'll take care of this, you'll take care of that, if you look at, one of the things that we mow is we mow a lot of the cheetah lots. We don't just mow parks. We handle the mowing for the entire city as far as.
So Scott, when you do that, are you collecting any revenue for like mowing the cheetah properties?
Well,
That has not been the occurrence in the past.
Okay.
How many lots are we talking?
Hold on, Scott, during the budget process, can maybe you and Jake come up with some ways to maybe, not county parks, but other areas that we're currently mowing that maybe we shouldn't be, or if it's property, can we as a city sell it, or is there, other than like ditches that we have to maintain, is there stuff out there that we have an opportunity to
give you an example, out in front of Hugo's on Highway 2, the north and the south, east, west, whatever you wanna consider it. We have always, as long as I've been with the city, we have mowed that median.
Is that an agreement?
That's a state highway, and I have never understood why we mow
Okay,
it.
so Scott, there's an example, of things that maybe you could just sit down and start writing down. of things that say, hey, I don't understand that. Should we still be doing that? Can we reach out to the DOT and say, hey, you have to maintain this. We've done this in the past, but we don't have the budget anymore to do it.
No.
And then,
And I 100% Delane, we can do that. One of the things, too, the dikes have to be maintained to a certain level. Those take, they're not only are they time consuming, but they're dangerous.
but we don't have any choice in that though, do we?
No, we have no choice in that. So there's one, but
Right.
I'm just trying to give everybody an idea of what all our mowing encompasses.
So there's two things that you just said here briefly, like, for example, that I'll let the administrator figure that out, the cheetah property, maybe the city should be reimbursed for that, I don't know. That the median out there, and I'm sure there's other things that we can just, I think if we continue to start to cut away at different things like that, we can get your 400 acres down to 300 acres or even less maybe. That's savings.
Oh, it definitely saves. If you look at our fuel costs over the last 14 years, not just because of fuel going up, but obviously our mileage is gonna go up. With Cheetah right now, Councilperson Jurdy, right now, last year, we mowed all the ones by Bob's Ponds, which when I started, we didn't have Bob's Ponds. They were given to us. Well, there is some mowing in there. But right next to, across in that new development, last year, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 lots that we had to mow.
So there's 6 lots that you mow, Cheetah?
Now, with that being said, I know Barry Bingham was building a house up there here that started a house this spring. Clayton, you and I have had many talks about that area up there. It not only is it the 6 lots there, but then it's also, you have to mow the trails so that you have on each side of the trail. So it's all encompassing, and yes, if we sit, which I think is a great idea, to sit down and say, hey, why are we mowing this? Why aren't, should we, shouldn't we be? I think is definitely doing something that we definitely need to take a look at. There's also a lot of, with the parks, you take a look at Schuster Park. People don't realize how big Schuster Park is. And you go to the north end of Schuster Park, and the majority of the time it's a slough. If we've had rain. Now, in the past, we've had talks of turning things into natural grasses, into some of this stuff. One of the concerns you get, and I'm just giving.
Golf carts?
Well, the golf cart path is definitely a concern there, but I've found a way to work around that. But one of the things that there's a misconception, and we need to be able to teach people better, is that these natural grasses and stuff like that, people are worried about rodents. They're worried about mosquitoes. So as soon as people hear the idea natural grass or natural wild, flowers and stuff like that, they automatically go to a prairie, that's got, and they think to themselves, well, we're gonna have gophers, we're gonna have muskrats, we're gonna have this, we're gonna have that. There's ways to do around that. I'm actually working with the U of M and stuff, with the emerald ash borer. And some of our replantings where trees would go in would also be natural grass areas that would tie in with these, which we will reduce our amount of mowing. So, for Jeff and I and Jake to sit down, I think is a great idea to go through this, but it is going to be a very complex.
Yeah.
And time consuming.
I get that, and like I said, I think this is, I think sometimes we look at the big items, what's gonna I think we just need to look at items like that, you know,
Yeah.
initially, and then if each department does something similar, I think we could come up with some savings, you know.
There's no doubt, if we can turn some of the grass, you know, and I talked to Shannon Stassen a lot about this. And I spent a lot of time researching how Minneapolis, and I know we're 180 degrees from Minneapolis, but I spent a lot of time researching their park system and how they have done things with the natural grasses and stuff like that. And what you'll find out is the more nature-based like that, we are gonna save money, because you have to mow it once a year.
Yeah.
Instead of to give you an example, there's weeks in June where we have to get things twice a week. You know, there were times last year, and I'm not really even exaggerating, you would mow it and all of a sudden the guys would turn around and they swear to God it grew right after they went across it, you know? So, yeah.
So another question on that DOT area there, I mean, if they didn't mow it, we could mow it and charge them, right? Just like,
Well, at one time, there was an agreement that we would get paid for 2 mowings a year. As I've done some research into this, there was an agreement that we would get paid for 2 mowings a year. Well, then I don't know what's ever happened. I'm at a dead end on my research here.
Sure.
well, let's,
And where my point has been, okay, we have community beautification and stuff like that. Well, to me, when you drive into town, it should look like we care. So, I mean, yeah, I think we need to get with the DOT. We need to talk to them, find out what is going on, because like I say, in all my research, I've really come to a dead end as to what has happened in the past with that. And I think we can get with the DOT and find out, okay, how, you know, why are we going out to the railroad tracks?
do you mow the ditches along Barrett?
Barrett.
Or not Barrett, I'm sorry.
Just a point of order, I think that, you know, we're
Kind of getting off track.
we're getting stuck down a rabbit hole on a 30,000-foot discussion.
I get it, but I mean, we're talking about ways to cut money and we're just kind of brainstorming here, and yeah, we could be here.
But I would be more than happy to sit down and look at these and bring you a list of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no problems doing that. I think the number one thing is just everyone being on the same page
Right.
to look at it and address it.
Scott, can I just ask, when you ask the DOT, like who mows before that space and who mows after that space?
Okay, so as of right now, right after the railroad tracks, then UMC takes it to a certain point.
Okay.
To their entryways. And then after that, it's the state takes care of it, basically from the curve.
Okay.
I believe the state will lease the land out to farmers to
They
hay.
have,
For
yeah.
hay, yes. So.
So
but
they usually let it grow really
And if you
tall.
have any other questions, I'm
Okay,
more than
thanks.
happy. Thanks, guy.
Anything else?
No.
Good? Yep. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.